Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Jill Street Asia VC and PE Summit. We have a very interesting session here. We're going to talk about direct-to-consumer brands coming of age in Indonesia. We've got some seasoned participants in the direct-to-consumer industry, including, I'll introduce one by one, Duri Granziol, who's the CEO of Mama's Choice. We have Billy Kurniawan, who's the founder of Jiwa Group. And we had Jeffrey Uwono, who's the founder and CEO of Open Labs, which is a brand aggregator which invests directly in brands, taking more than a 50% stake and having a direct participation within that brand to build it and to build it out. So, Jeffrey, why don't we start with you from the sort of top-down perspective, and just to get your view. Well, first of all, let's give us a little bit of background on Open Labs, but then I would like you to give your view on what makes a direct-to-consumer brand successful, especially in a market like Indonesia, which is quite sort of hyper-local in terms of its nature.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff. So Open Labs is a brand aggregator. We've raised 100 million to invest in up-and-coming, high-growth potential small brands, and in particular, consumer brands. And I guess that's the reason why I've been invited to speak here. So as Angus pointed out, we do take a 51% to 100% stake. So it's either a partnership model or an outright acquisition. And I think one of the things that we're really happy about and proud about is how quickly we respond to deals. So once a founder talks to us, gives us their financials, usually all we need is 1 week to be able to give a yes or a no. That's something that founders really, really appreciate about us, and I think something that's a little bit different from us versus other sources of funding. We do also have a best-in-class ops team, and I'd like to think that we're very founder-friendly. So one of the common pieces of feedback that we hear from our brand partners, our founders, is that in comparison to maybe some of the experiences that their friends have with other brand aggregators, they found us to be very founder-friendly, and that's become really a core value to Open Labs. I think in terms of like what we look for, it's the usual stuff, right? Size is important. So if it's a little bit too small, it might not make sense. But in our portfolio, our brands range from $500,000 a year to 10 million a year in revenue. We also want to invest in fast-growing companies, obviously. Profitability is very important for us. We typically do not invest in unprofitable companies. So we're looking at positive cash flow, successful businesses. Category leadership is another thing that we look at as well. So some kind of evidence that the brand is doing well, that consumers love them, that they rank highly in keyword search and things like that. And finally, if it's a partnership, then we look very closely at the founder as well, whether we think that the founder is someone that we can work with and kind of grow together.
And are there any sort of particular verticals which you think are best suited to the direct-to-consumer model?
Yeah, I think maybe before I answer that directly, I do want to clarify that, we invest in consumer brands, but not necessarily DTC brands. And the distinction there is that a lot of our brands are omni-channel, meaning they sell online and offline, but that they also sell directly and also indirectly. So it's possible to be a D2C brand with offline and indirect distribution channels. So I think it's really just a strategic choice, right, that brands have to make between focus versus maximizing growth, if you will. And if you want to maximize growth, then omni-channel is better because it's easier to build trust, build awareness through offline. And you can use that to really amplify your online growth. But of course, focus works better if the organization just isn't ready, whether it's in terms of team, process, capital. Being omni-channel is very difficult to do. So sometimes focus is better, and online, it's a really big market already. The reach is big. So it's very possible to be very successful purely focusing on online. So for us, we just assess, brands on a brand by brand basis. But it can also share that, a lot of our brands are omni-channel.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. Duri, why don't I move to you next? Obviously, you know, you're directly involved in a brand which has multiple products, and you know, distribution is I think mainly online. In fact, I'm a consumer of your, well, not myself, but my wife's a consumer of your products, as is our baby.
Right.
So yeah, we have them in our house, and I think I'm told my wife bought both on Tokopedia and on Shopee. Could that be right?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we're a brand. We established ourselves in roughly 3 years ago. We're a brand under the theParentInc, which also runs the biggest parenting platform in Southeast Asia, which is called theAsiaparent. And yeah, basically we're using all the insights we get from all the young parents, what they like, what they don't like, to create products that fit their unmet needs and just are better than what's on the market, right? And yeah, we're in Indonesia since 3 years. We have 75 products already. If you go stretch mark cream, which is one of our top sellers on Shopee, Lazada, you will see us on top. We're also in 5 other markets already. Also, as Jeffrey said, like omni-channel at some point when you want to grow further. So we're now in 250 stores or so. We're going to open up our own stores soon. So yeah, pretty big.
And so taking a step back, I mean, how did you originally sort of come to be involved in the business and be one of the founders of it?
So my background is e-commerce. I used to run Lazada in Indonesia, right? And one thing we saw is, right, I met Roshni, the founder of theAsiaparent, and we were talking about how media connects with commerce, right? And I spent quite some time in China, and you could see some models emerging there. And we really saw, well, okay, there's some unmet needs. There's a lot of brands that want to sell in these countries, but they come from outside and they don't really fit the exact thing that consumer wants. Either they're too expensive or their USP doesn't really fit the market. And we saw there was a big gap, and that we have, together with our media company, that we have a great opportunity to address that gap and get to the consumer fast, right? Because we already had some access to consumer via the media company. So that was basically how we came up with it.
So the creation of the products themselves come from consultation with parents online and through.
Oh yeah, it's community based, right? Our brand is extremely community based. We're listening into the market, what they like, what they don't like, what is their favorite product right now, and why is it good, and what would they like more on it, and we try to. So I give you an example. Our stretch mark cream is the only stretch mark cream with aloe vera, and it comes from the insight that in southern countries, in warm countries, when your skin stretches, it also gets really itchy, and that's less of an issue in the north, where most brands of stretch mark creams come from. And basically, we then took that insight, and we also knew that aloe vera was a very much trendy ingredient in the last few years, and it's very much known to soothe the skin when it's itchy. So that was how we created one of our top sellers, for example.
Right, and what? Just out of interest, what was the first product that you launched, or did you launch a kind of batch of products at the same time?
So it was a few. It was a toothpaste without fluoride, because fluoride in high dosages is not very healthy for the fetal development. So we were like, oh, maybe you want to be pregnant for 9 months, you maybe don't want to take fluoride. While it's overall good to have it in your toothpaste, maybe those 9 months not. So things like that, right? And so it was the fluoride-free toothpaste and the stretch mark cream. And the mouthwash. One big point is we are in markets where halal is very important, right? We take safety very important, safety for the fetus, safety for the mother, but also spiritual safety, right? And mouthwash has alcohol most of the time, so we have alcohol-free mouthwash. So it's halal.
Very interesting. Well, that's fascinating. Billy, why don't we move on to you and just give us a little bit of background on yourself, and obviously, you know, Jiwa has grown very, very quickly, and you know, food is by nature a very kind of localized product. So, you know, I mean, I know myself, you know, I first came to Indonesia, the idea of mixing chocolate and cheese didn't really make sense, but I've since got used to it. But you know, so you've got to go with local tastes if you're developing a product. Could you just introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of sort of background on Jiwa and how it came to be?
Sorry, Angus.
Can you hear me?
I lost you for a moment there. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So could you give us an introduction to yourself and also an introduction to Jiwa and how it's grown so quickly? Yeah, it's now I think you have more than 1,000, if not more than 1,300 outlets altogether.
All right. So thank you, Angus. So my name is Billy. I'm the founder of Jiwa Group. And basically, we are a player in the tech-enabled F&B industry. So Jiwa Group itself, we have 3 brands under our portfolio with the Kopi Janji Jiwa, Jiwa Toast, and Jiwa Tea. So we started in 2018. We see that we want to model for grab and go market in Indonesia, especially for food and beverage in that sense. So we go for the coffee market as an avid coffee lover myself. So I drink a lot of specialty coffee from different origins. So I don't know whether you guys love coffee in the South. So with that, I'm trying to have this business model that is being able to be capital efficient in a way, and also that we can be able to have a space optimization. So with that being said, we managed to grow our number of outlets within 3 years to 1,000 stores. When we hear about the coffee market itself, I think we started to see that we need pairings for coffee in itself. So in 2019, we launched our second brand. It's called Jiwa Toast, and that's also providing toast with a local twist. So we introduced toast with rendang flavor and also with a specific region, like we have tuna lado mudo is from West Sumatra in Padang. So when you are mentioning about that hyper local taste, that's becoming very important in our product offerings. And one of our best selling, of course, the legendary es kopi susu that everyone in Indonesia loves so much now, with a local mix of the palm sugar, and also with the we did roast our own coffee, and everything is sourced from Indonesia. So we have that approach towards our brands, and that has been our formula from day one.
Very interesting. But you effectively you've started off as an offline brand, or did you develop the offline and the on? I mean, you're obviously it's designed for the Gojek and Grab market, but your kind of first outlets, were they kind of how did you advertise in the first place and promote the brand?
So I think for that, I think we were and are currently available both in offline and online channel. So when we first started, I think that's when the food delivery era started also. I mean, that's when the traction with the food delivery and people are getting more educated to use aggregators to get their products as quickly as possible to their place. I think that's when we started to. So we have that focus when we first start also in that sense. But that has been the first starting point for us, and we maximize and penetrate through these 2 channels with dine-in markets and also with the online markets. Angus.
Right. So you started with both channels at the same time, and I guess when the pandemic struck, that everything basically a lot of it moved online, and what kind of do you ever give a breakdown of what the split between offline and online sales?
I guess
very general terms.
Pandemic is kind of a unique way how we see the markets, especially for F&B, since most of the retail players in terms of F&B has location in malls and office buildings and everything else, all this leasable area, and they have these mobility restrictions, right, during this pandemic times. So it comes a lot of changing customer behavior. So when we first start pre-pandemic, I think the offline sales contribute more than 50% of the sales. But during this pandemic, there's a shift now. Then now we can see a balance of like 50% of offline and 50% of online in terms of that.
Very interesting. And going back to you, Jeffrey, I mean, is this how does that balance commonly occur within the direct consumer market? I mean, do brands generally start online or offline? Because offline is a way of as a kind of shop front for your brand, isn't it? And I've seen certain direct consumer brands like Sociolith, for example, have started off online and then suddenly you see it springing up in malls around the place. I mean, how does that dynamic work? in your experience from looking at multiple brands?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say the majority of the founders that we talk to, maybe it's a little bit of a case of grass is greener on the other side, but a lot of the native online brands want to set up offline, and then a lot of the offline brands want to set up online. And to some degree, we do agree with the sentiment of, omnichannel being more likely to maximize growth. One of the really interesting things is that we have seen a lot of brands that prior to the pandemic is maybe like 80-20, 80% offline, 20% online. But as a result of going through the pandemic, they've really had to pivot very hard into online, where, it's now maybe 50-50 or even 60-40, 70-30 in favor of online. And so one of the really common reasons for partnering with us at Open Labs is that, we know the online space very, very well. And we can help a lot of these traditionally offline brands build a brand online, do digital marketing, performance marketing, and all that really good stuff. But it's certainly a really big trend that we've seen where a lot of offline brands, as a result of the pandemic, have now realized online is a must. It's not something they can comfortably, gradually grow into. It's something they really have to push for. And that it's a different skill set.
Right. And going back to you, Duri, because I was fascinated by the fact that, a lot of your products come from effectively, people talking and would you say that a lot of the promotion comes through social media as well? Is that an important part of the whole sort of brand promotion?
Yeah, of course, right. Social media allows you to have two-way communication with your consumer, right? Like typically when you sell in stores, if it's in your own stores, that's fine. But if you're a brand of products, then you typically sell in specialty stores. So you don't actually have direct communication with your consumer, right? While online on social media, people put comments, they ask questions, and you can definitely directly interact, which we see as core for our brand, right? And that's also why online will always be the dominant factor for us. If you open up our own stores, it's sort of similar, but we're not our branding people are not directly connected to the salesperson, and it's hard to document what the salesperson has in terms of conversations, right? While online, it's all transparent.
Interesting. And Billy, how? Because obviously, Jiwa is a very strong brand now, and do you continue to? Do you use, for example, influencers to keep promoting the brand, or how do you sort of keep that kind of brand image rolling with Jiwa?
So I think for in that aspect, I think social media plays an important part. I think for a lot of our customers are in the Gen Y, then they are very social media active in that sense. So we have one of the largest followings of consumers in terms of F&B in Indonesia. So with that being said, we communicate regularly, and of course, like Duri said, we can be more interactive in terms of finding the right suggestion from them, and also the comments and everything else. We pay attention to that in that sense. So in a way, we use a lot of influencers in terms of trying to introduce like new product launching or this kind of stuff towards our consumers in that side.
Right. How many products does Jiwa have? And I know you've got 3 separate brands, but how many products do you run? And just out of interest, have you had any products that haven't worked? And have you sort of stopped various lines because they just haven't worked?
It's an interesting question. So I think in the DNA of our company, actually, is always to offer creative and innovative product. Of course, that with that being said, there will be failures, right? So, but it's better for you to try and see what the market, how the market responds towards that. So we did have stopped some of the menus that are not performing well in terms of that. We do a quarterly review in terms of this menu also when we launch a new product. It has to meet a certain standard of sales target in that sense, and also have to have that not only sales target, but we can see some of the followings from the customer if they really tried and they enjoy the product in that sense. So these are basically metrics that we use to actually whether the menu the SKU can stay in the product offerings or whether it has to be taken out in that sense.
Right. And can I go back to you, Duri? Have you had the same experience? Have there been products which you've decided to discontinue because they just haven't worked, despite lots of positive talk about it?
I mean, you have to try fast, fail fast, learn fast, right? Like, it's very hard. Sometimes something is trendy for a while, and you don't know exactly why it's trendy. And I mean, it's the same with any social media thing, right? It goes viral. There's no secret formula. Otherwise, like sometimes some things work, sometimes they don't. So definitely, yeah.
And Jeffrey, sorry.
I mean, an example is that backache is a problem for young mothers, and we had a massage oil specifically for backache, but it didn't do well for some reason, so we cut it out again.
And Jeffrey, what's your view on that? I mean, do you think that brands should, let products run until they actually fail, or if it doesn't work, then just pull back, before it's too late?
No, I definitely agree with the sentiment of try fast and fail fast and learn fast. Very much so. I would also add that, there maybe plateau is not the right word, but there are just certain natural limits as to how quickly a product can grow. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a failed product. It's just that category for that specific channel just has just a natural limit as to how many people are searching for that particular product and wanting to buy that product. So one of the things that we do try to do is to figure out, well, how big are these product categories? Like, what is the volume of demand? What is the market share for a particular brand? And sometimes, even if it's not growing very quickly, but it's number one in their category, then you could argue that's still a success, right? And what you're really banking on is the overall market growing, and the market leader being able to grow with the market. So there's some context that's required as to define what's successful and what's not. So for Open Labs, we're not trying to invest in brands that can become unicorns. I mean, obviously, I'd be very happy if they did, but there is such, like, being able to hit first base, second base is pretty good, right? You don't need everything to be a home run. And a brand that is profitable, and in some cases looks like a dividend rather than a growth play, is still a success for us.
Very good. Just Billy, going back to you, just in terms of what you see as the sort of the growth prospects for Jiwa. I mean, how big can Jiwa actually get? I mean, what are you sort of focusing on in terms of, can you double your outlets in the next 2 years, or can you triple them? I mean, how do you see the sort of the rollout of the business going from here? I mean, and I guess at some point, you may look to IPO.
I think for that, we did have a few priorities in that sense. Of course, the store expansion is also our main goal that we have, as we foresee that I think for Indonesia itself, it can have 2 to 3 main local coffee chain players that can compete with each other in that sense. And also for the regions, there's still a lot of second and third tier city that is left unexplored, that we are trying to assess and actually go into those cities. But first of all, I think the priority is to be stay on the top of mind of our current consumers in that sense, and also still winning the number of market share that we have. At the end of the day, we don't want to be just a trendable brand, right? And we just want to have to be sustainable in a way, because we are profitable from day one as with that mindset. So we did a lot of brand study regularly to actually have the better positioning of our brands in itself, whether it's a coffee brand, whether it's a toast brand, or whether it's a tea brand in that sense. So that has been our priority. The second priority, I think, is also that we, in the next 3 to 5 years, I think we want to be that top tech-enabled F&B company in Indonesia. So we focus on the customer experience, customer journey on our customer apps also. We have Jiwa Plus that actually focusing in terms of retaining our customers, giving more interactive features and loyalty awards for these customers in that sense. When we are mentioning about IPO, we do have that target in mind with us, but I think settling this priority first and maintaining market share in this very competitive industry is very, very important right now.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I guess the current environment is not really the best time for an IPO in the tech space, but I'm sure it will get better, you know, in the next 2 to 3 years, certainly. And Duri, can you give us an outline of you know, how you see Mum's Choice sort of rolling out? And you know, obviously you've got already got a regional footprint. I mean, are the regional markets very big for you as well, or is Indonesia still very much the dominant market?
I mean, Indonesia is the biggest market in terms of population, right? But then you have countries like Philippines that are half the size, but still 100 million people, right? So yeah, the region is important to us. It gives us additional scale because you can grow in 2 ways, right? You can go offline, which is still 90%, 70% of the market, like depending, but still the majority of the market, especially after all the restrictions are gone, right? And you can either go that or online in other markets, right? We're doing both. But since we said we're primarily an online brand, other markets are interesting to us. And in our specific category, they're still similar enough that we have synergies between them.
Right, and expanding sort of offline in Indonesia. I mean, how do you go about that?
I mean, we work with distribution partners, right? Because offline is quite fragmented, unfortunately, in Indonesia, right? It's quite labor intensive. You have partially to invoice every branch of the retailer separately. You have to deliver to each one separately. If you're starting up to go offline, it's relatively hard to pull this off yourself. So you work with distribution partners, but we have a several tiered approach, right? We try to do some stuff ourselves and some stuff with our distribution partners.
And is the same true of the online business? I mean, do you use third parties for distribution and so on? And you use obviously use third party marketplaces. I mean, have you penetrated all the major marketplaces already, or is there still more to come?
Yeah. No. I mean, we set up on any marketplace. That's relatively similar each one to each other. So your marginal cost of listing on another marketplace is relatively low, right? But we also have our own website, and obviously we're trying to get loyal customers to shop regularly from our own website. But I mean, the Lazadas and Shopees are still they're still investing a lot in their traffic, as is Grab and Gojek, right? So you obviously need to harness that sort of free traffic you get there.
And you know, obviously digital payments is another big area of growth in Indonesia, and they can potentially provide very interesting discounts and so on. Is that part of your? Does that have a positive impact on your products, or not so much?
For us, it's not so important, right? Because our basket size is relatively small, right? So I think pay later is really important for people who sell bigger basket sizes, because that suddenly enables, like digitally, you now suddenly have a lot of different tools available to not pay everything up front, which offline you wouldn't have back in the days, right? So, but now offline they have POSs as well that enable that. But I think that's a big game changer for bigger purchases, but not for us, right? Our products are 20, 30 Sing dollars or 100,000 rupiah, so it's not that.
Moving to you, Billy, because I was talking on digital payments, because I know you can buy offline stores anyway. Often you arrive at the till and there's an OVO sign there, or there's a Shopee Pay sign there, and you get cashbacks and discounts. Is that an interesting driver for your business?
I think initially yes. In a way, it's one of the possible enabler for our growth, basically in terms of convenience, in terms of providing payment options, right? Payment channels. But with the cashback and everything, I think it comes with about their runway also, right? In terms of that. So initially, yes, it gives the consumer better advantage in a way that they have a lot of benefits from this cashback and everything, but usually it just go for 2 to 3 months. After that, it's gone. So for us, I think it's a good enabler in a way, more channels or payment. We currently do not engage with any other local banks now for like EDC or stuff. It's much simpler to use QR codes and digital payments for the consumers in terms of offline consumers.
Right. And Jeffrey, do you see sort of financial products having a big part in the expansion of direct-to-consumer products?
Well, I mean, I think it's for sure a positive, uplifting trend. I think there's still a question of whether it creates new demand or whether it's just switching, one payment method to another. But obviously, we're big fans of it. The more financial inclusion, the easier access to credit and payment, the better it'll be for everyone. So I see it as long-term for sure. This will be a big thing. Is it a big thing right now? Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Turning to another subject. Start with you, Duri. What keeps you awake at night? What are the main risks, do you think, in your business? Is it related to increases in input costs for your products, which might have an influence on what you can sell them for? What are the things, or is it competition? Where is the major competition coming from?
Competition.
Yeah.
Sorry. Competition is something you have under control, right? You can measure it. You can try to be better. I think what the COVID situation showed is just supply chain, right? Like supply chain is a nightmare. Like the last 2 years, you have delays, unexpected delays. You have increase of costs that are partially crazy, right? We already have a crazy increase in container freight, and with the oil price now going up, we don't know what's going to happen, right? You have port congestions because ports have been shut down because of COVID outbreaks. Stuff like that, our supply chain, the global supply chain, is not built to absorb these kind of shocks, and you have like delays that then go months and months into the next few months, right? So that keeps me awake at night because we can't really control it. We built a much more resilient supply chain. We built a lot of redundancies that obviously go into our cost. But I mean, what the time has shown now is that if you try to optimize 100% for cost and make everything as lean as possible, then suddenly you're in a situation where you have outsourced everything and nothing works anymore, right? And that is a big thing.
Right. And Billy, what's your view on that? I mean, obviously, your space is quite competitive. Companies like theAsiaparent, for example. Obviously you've got players like Starbucks who are still there and still expanding. How do you feel about the competitive environment? Is that something which, I mean, again, you can see it in front of your eyes, or are there other things which worry you?
So I think in this context, I think what Duri mentioned is also somehow relatable to us in terms of we have to keep our we are mostly selling every product is in terms of affordability is one of our USP, also in the affordability of high quality product. And we are mentioning what high quality product comes with high quality supplies. And with that being said, the supply chain basically the increased price of the supplies has been one of the concerns also for us in terms of COGS, right? In terms of that for us. I think with that being said, also staying relevant to our customers, consumers, since the F&B industry is very fluid and fast moving in a way that you cannot be left behind. I know you have to stay up to date in whatever it is, whatever current trends there are, and of course being top of mind. That's one of the few things that I already highlight earlier. That is the always becoming my concern every day in terms of that.
And that's Jeffrey. What are your thoughts on that? What do you see as what's going to stop you going to sleep at night?
Yeah, to kind of add on to maybe the point that Duri brought up, and this has happened many times, so this isn't like, once in a blue moon, but it happens quite frequently, where we would review a brand's financials, and then we would notice that COGS suddenly improved, COGS margin suddenly improved, right? And the gross margin became higher. And we would ask, oh, what happened? How were you able to improve your profitability? And the answer very commonly became, oh, we switched from local sourcing to China. And as an Indonesian, that really depresses me, right? Because our country just isn't really competitive in certain categories. And there's a lot of structural issues at play here, like labor, just so many things that I think would need to change for Indonesia to be competitive relative to China in terms of production. And I was in a fashion e-commerce where we purposefully wanted to source locally, right? We worked extremely hard to build the local supply chain and to create a competitive product made in Indonesia. But that e-commerce company was bigger and well-funded than the brands that we currently have. And for them, it's not realistic to invest in building local production that can be competitive to China, because they just don't have the volume yet. And that's something that I think something I think about a lot. Then I think another thing that another structural issue is around taxes, right? I just think that it would be more efficient if, say, for example, marketplaces took over the aspect of paying the sales tax or handling the sales tax, so that everybody is on a level playing field, and you don't have certain brands who pay tax, certain brands who don't pay tax, and certain brands from overseas that export to Indonesia and then also don't pay the same level of taxes. So, that's just something that that's concerning to me. I mean, I don't really think about. I mean, of course, I do think about every brand's point of view, but I also got to think about some of these macro issues, and that's supply chain and taxes, I think, and labor are three very big things that I think can use a lot of improvement for Indonesia to really flourish.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you on a lot of those points. I've actually got a question come in from the audience, and probably one for you, Jeff. Just read it through. So Indonesia has a lot of offline brands, but they're mostly MSMEs. Does it make sense business-wise for brand aggregators to nurture these brands to become omnichannel, or would it be better just to acquire omnichannel brands?
Ooh, great question. So initially, our hypothesis was that we would acquire companies that have basically found their DNA or found their formula and help them amplify it, meaning we wouldn't try to change their identity, right? So, i.e., we would acquire omnichannel in order to grow omnichannel. We would acquire digital native just to specifically grow digital native. But after talking to many brands and founders, we've come to realize that a lot of them aspire to do more, right? They want to build their brand. They don't want to just be. They want to be a household name. And so we've realized that we have to help them make that transformation from whether it's purely online to omnichannel, or purely offline, and then how do they grow online. And so we've built up teams. We have an offline team and a online team, each experts in their own respective areas, to help brands make that transformation, if that is something that the founder aspires to do. Right.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's that balance which you already mentioned before is pretty interesting. One wants the other one.
Maybe I can give you a specific example, right? So one of the brands that we've mentioned publicly in the past is a seasoning FMCG brand. So she was traditionally B2B, selling to restaurants. That's been the majority of the brand's history. But they want to expand into modern trade. They want to expand online, and so we helped her. She doesn't have a digital marketing team. This is like a 10-15 person company. They don't really have a digital marketing team. So our digital marketing team basically ran their digital marketing, and we've been able to grow their direct sales by 4x, ever since we took it over a few months ago. But not just that, we also have a offline distribution team who's helping her create a product specifically for general trade, right? So she can sell the seasoning product through the warung-warungs. And this could be a game changer if it's successful, right? So that's the kind of thing that I think if for a brand aggregator to really add value, you need to be able to go where the founder thinks is the support her vision for her brand.
Fascinating. Yeah. So we've got another question here. Can we expect M&A amongst direct-to-consumer industry players also to expand on the businesses of Jiwa and Mama's Choice?
Oh, is that from
So
me?
I guess they're saying, well, I think that's probably a quick comment from both Duri and Billy on that. And to, do you think there's going to be more M&A and consolidation in either of your industries?
Yeah, I think, and I mean, there's certain trend now because of Tracia and so on that it's just all these roll-up companies that will force this trend or drive this trend. It remains to be seen how healthy it is, because as Jeffrey said, right, if you buy a brand and you make something else out of it, that might not necessarily be very successful, right? Like, and it has happened in the past in my specific, like, personal care, right? Unilever and P&G, they have always been absorbing brands and basically just plugging their distribution structure in, like have plugged new brands into their distribution structure and just kept the story of the brand and so on, right? And I think if a brand is big enough to have the support structure with distribution, with supply chain and so on, then it obviously makes sense to take another brand that has a great following and a great story, keep the brand as it is, but just put it on distribution and sourcing and manufacturing platform, and get synergies out of that, right?
Or I think in the context of in F&B industry, we can see that I think a lot of big players will go for inorganic growth. In that sense, they will not create a new brand, but will acquire winning brands in certain product specific segment. I mean, Indonesian customer love product specific brands. They don't go for variants, a lot of variants in one brand, but they go for a winning specific product in a certain brand. So I think we can see that in our upcoming years. With that being said, also it is also a strategic and smart move in a way that F&B companies usually work in the similar infrastructure in terms of supply chain, in terms of operational capabilities, and it will create a good consolidation as it will increase efficiency in a way.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Jeffrey?
Yeah, obviously my answer is super biased, but I absolutely think this will happen. And the reason is because if you just think about it from a very practical point of view, there are a lot of entrepreneur founders who are really good at getting things started, right? Like 10 orders a day, 50 orders a day. There are founders who know how to do that really well and drive that growth. But once a business starts to cross something larger, like, 100 orders a day, 500 orders a day, certainly 1,000 orders a day, the skill set required to run that business becomes very different, right? You have to build operations. You need to have systems, SOP. You need to have teams. You need to know how to manage those teams. And this is just a skill set that a lot of SMEs don't have. And I brought up the example of the seasoning company. They want to grow online, but the founder doesn't know much about online, doesn't have an online team, doesn't know how to recruit one. And to be frank, her business is maybe, especially online, too small to justify building up a world-class digital marketing team. But for a brand aggregator like Open Labs with tens of brands, it does make sense. It does make sense to build a world-class, we've got people from BBDO, Ogilvy, Leo Burnett, for the creative, and basically best of the best from any kind of industry that you can think of. And it makes sense to build these teams because they have so many more brands that they can kind of help and amortize that cost, right? So financially, it does make sense, and Open Labs is profitable, right? We are profitable despite having recruited many expensive talent.
Very good. Well, that's a fascinating discussion. There is one more question for you, Billy, which I'll give to you now. How would Jiva improve traceability and sourcing transparency for your coffee beans?
Oh, okay. I think traceability, I think in Indonesia, it's an ongoing process in that sense, especially in the coffee industry. So we are actually part of Specialty Coffee Association of Indonesia, where we source our beans directly from the suppliers that actually are that can provide traceability in that sense. And we are a company that are committed to ESG. So traceability is becoming more and more important for us in that sense. But we do work with local small farmers. So in terms of large batch of coffee, we can go and find and source from more reputable companies with all these standards and regulations that are in place. But when we are mentioning about small farmers and we are buying small batch, these are the things that actually we, in one perspective, we are trying to nurture and help these farmers, but in a way also educate them in a way that they can go and have these practices that actually becoming more and more of a standard in a sense in terms of that. So in the future, we have a plans also, of course. There's this one blockchain company that we are currently engaging in that actually can help us to, when you scan something, that you can go and trace back to the direct to the farmers initiative actually that actually supply the coffee beans. We want to go, because our concept is actually from farm to cups, right? So we did source our own beans, we roast it in our facility, and we serve it directly to the customers, let's say. So in this whole journey, I think traceability is one of the main factors that we go. But yeah, the main focus is actually trying to nurture these small farmers.
Yeah, very good. I mean, that sounds like a fantastic thing to be doing. Well, unfortunately, we've now reached the end of our session, and yeah, it's been a fascinating discussion. We've touched on a lot of different points, and yeah, I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer. But thank you all very much indeed for your participation, and you know, hopefully we can at some point meet face to face in the future. Thanks very much.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.